The Great War Council chamber stretched so wide that some delegates needed telescopes to see the center floor. Thousands of aliens filled the massive space, their bodies glowing, floating or shifting in forms that defied human understanding. Some breathed methane through tubes. Others existed as clouds of organized particles. A few were so large they needed their own atmospheric domes. High Archon Velmora stood at the center podium, her ancient form wrapped in protective gases. She had lived for 600 years and led the Galactic Coalition through peace and prosperity. Now she was preparing to surrender. "The Vothrak Empire controls 70% of our territory," she announced, her voice translated into 1,000 languages simultaneously. "Supreme Overlord Krathus has proven unstoppable. His fleets crush ours. His warriors are superior. We have one choice remaining: negotiate terms of surrender before complete annihilation." The chamber erupted in sounds that ranged from musical chimes to deep grinding noises. Every species had an opinion. Most agreed with Velmara. A few wanted to keep fighting, but none offered a realistic plan. General Thack stood among the military commanders, his crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. He had won 300 battles in his career. Against the Vothrak, he had lost every engagement. The shame burned in his consciousness like acid. In the diplomatic section, Ambassador Yoon Hana sat quietly. She represented Earth, a small planet with one species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. Humanity had offered help, but the Coalition had politely declined. What could such a primitive species contribute? Hana had sent human volunteers anyway, 20 soldiers led by a man named Kang Daewon. The Coalition military had given them an impossible reconnaissance mission to the Vothrak homeworld. Everyone expected them to die quickly and provide some useful data through their death recordings. That was 3 months ago. No one had heard from them since. "We will vote on surrender terms in 1 hour," Velmara said. "All delegates should prepare." The massive doors exploded. The blast was crude, chemical-based, the kind of explosive that civilized species had stopped using millennia ago. Chunks of metal flew across the chamber. Shields flickered to life automatically, protecting the delegates. Alarms screamed. Security forces rushed toward the smoke. A figure walked through the flames. He was humanoid, roughly 2 meters tall, wearing armor that looked like it had been dragged through a meat grinder. Burn marks covered the metal plates. Whole sections were missing, showing the reinforced fabric underneath. The right shoulder pauldron had been torn completely off, exposing scarred flesh beneath. The helmet retracted with a hiss, revealing a human face. Kang Daewon looked like he had fought through every level of hell to reach this chamber. His face was covered in fresh scars. Blood, human red blood, dripped from a cut above his eye. His black hair was matted with dirt and something darker. But his eyes were clear, focused, and completely unbothered by the thousands of aliens staring at him. In his right hand, he dragged something heavy wrapped in a coalition banner. The fabric was soaked through with purple liquid that definitely wasn't human blood. A trail of the substance marked his path across the polished floor. "Stop him," General Thax ordered. Security forces raised their weapons: plasma rifles, sonic disruptors, gravity cannons. Enough firepower to vaporize a tank. Daewon didn't even look at them. He kept walking toward the center floor, his boots leaving bloody footprints. He reached the exact spot where Velmara had stood moments before. The High Archon had floated backward, confused and alarmed by this breach of protocol. Daewon stopped. He looked up at the thousands of aliens watching him. Then he threw down his burden. The Coalition banner unwrapped as it hit the floor, spilling its contents across the chamber's center. A head rolled free, not a human head. This was something else entirely. 6 eyes, each the size of a human fist, stared lifelessly at the ceiling. Mandibles that could crush steel hung open in a frozen scream. The skull was elongated, covered in armored plates that had been specifically designed to be indestructible. Purple blood still oozed from the severed neck. The chamber fell absolutely silent. Every being present recognized that face. It had been broadcast across the galaxy on every screen, every hologram, every propaganda feed for 3 years. The face of their conqueror. The face of their nightmare. Supreme Overlord Krathus the Undying. "He's dead," Daewon said simply. His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in days. He spoke in basic galactic common with a heavy Earth accent. "The Vothrak Homeworld Command is in chaos. Their fleet structure is collapsing. You have maybe 48 hours before they reorganize under a new leader. No one moved. No one spoke. Day-One reached up and unsealed more of his armor, letting pieces fall to the floor with heavy clangs. Underneath his body was a map of recent injuries. Bandages wrapped around his torso showed purple and red stains mixing together, his blood and Vothrak blood. You should probably attack now, he added. While they're weak, Velmara found her voice first. This is impossible. Krethus had a personal guard of 500 elite warriors. His fortress has never been breached. His biology was enhanced to near immortality. You're telling me one human— 3 of us made it to the fortress, Day-One interrupted. Only I made it out. Hana stood up in the diplomatic section, her face pale. She had sent those men. She had authorized that mission. Day-One. The others? Dead. Park Junho died holding a corridor so I could reach the throne room. Namjisu died destroying the fortress power grid. I'm the only one who walked out. He said it flatly without emotion as if reporting weather conditions. General Thax floated forward, his crystalline form vibrating with disbelief. You breached the most defended location in Vothrak space with 3 soldiers? It's done, Day-One cut him off. I didn't come here to debate tactics. I came to deliver proof and intelligence. The Vothrak are vulnerable right now. You can win this war if you move fast. Or you can keep talking and lose your chance. He pulled a data chip from his armor and tossed it onto the floor next to Krethus' head. Everything I learned about their fleet positions, supply lines, and command structure. You're welcome. Then Kang Day-One turned and started walking toward the exit. Stop, Velmara commanded. You cannot simply leave. We have questions. How did you accomplish this? What methods did you use? Day-One paused and looked back over his shoulder. For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. It might have been anger, or exhaustion, or disgust. You sent us to die and collect data. We did better than that. We cut the head off your enemy. Now use it. Security forces moved to block his path, but Velmara raised a hand. Let him go. But Ambassador Yoon, your human will remain in this system. We will have answers. Day-One walked out through the destroyed doors, leaving the most powerful beings in the galaxy staring at the severed head of the creature they had feared for 3 years. Hana stood frozen in her seat, her mind racing. She had thought humanity could help through technology, through alliance, through careful diplomacy. She had never imagined they would help like this. The silence in the chamber finally broke. Everyone started talking at once, arguing, demanding explanations, calling for investigations. But underneath all the noise was a new feeling that hadn't existed before. Hope. And something else. Fear. If one human could kill the unkillable, what else were humans capable of? 3 days after Kang Day-One walked into the War Council with Krethus' head, the chamber reconvened for testimony. This time security was tripled. Not to keep enemies out, but to make sure the human didn't leave. Day-One stood at the center floor in clean clothes provided by the Coalition medical staff. His wounds had been treated, but the scars remained. He refused the offered chair, standing at attention like a soldier facing judgment. Ambassador Yoon Hana sat beside him as his advocate. She had barely slept since the incident, preparing legal arguments and diplomatic defenses. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy depended on how this went. High Archon Velmara floated above them, surrounded by her council of advisors. General Thax stood nearby, his crystalline body still vibrating with barely contained disbelief. Thousands of delegates filled the chamber again, all demanding answers. Kang Day-One, Velmara began, you have committed an act that should have been impossible. You have changed the course of this war, but we must understand how. Take us through your mission from the beginning. Day-One was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady but distant, like he was describing something that happened to someone else. You sent 20 of us on a reconnaissance mission to the Vothrak homeworld. You said it was to gather intelligence on their defenses. Everyone knew it was a suicide mission. You wanted data from our helmet cameras when we died. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. No one denied it, we knew it too, Day-One continued. But humans volunteer for impossible missions all the time. It's kind of what we do. He pulled up a holographic display showing the route they had taken. The Vothrak homeworld, Vothros Prime, is protected by 72 defense stations, 4 fleet groups, and a planetary shield that could withstand a supernova. You couldn't get an army there. But you could get 20 soldiers there if they were smart and lucky, General Thax interrupted. How did you penetrate the defense perimeter? We didn't penetrate it. We went around it. Daewon zoomed in on the hologram. The Vothrek scanned for exotic particles, energy signatures, anything unusual. But humans are basic carbon-based life. We registered as background noise. We used a captured supply transport, hid in shipping containers full of weapons. They brought us right to the surface. A delegate from the Talesian Collective spoke up. That's impossible. Their bioscanners would detect any life form. They detect life forms that breathe unusual gases or emit radiation, or have exotic biology. Human biology is so basic we slipped right through. We're too primitive to scan. There was a murmur through the chamber. The primitive species had used their primitiveness as camouflage. Once on the surface, we split into teams, Daewon continued. His voice got quieter. We hit supply depots, communication arrays, patrol routes. Classic guerrilla tactics. The Vothrek had never faced an enemy that hid and ran. They're honorable warriors. They expect direct combat. This is when your team started dying, Velmara said softly. Yeah. Daewon's jaw tightened. The Vothrek are strong, fast. Their armor is better than ours. When they caught us in direct combat, we lost. Every time. We lost Kim Sunwoo in the first week. Then Lee Yuna. Then 5 more in an ambush on day 12. He pulled up images from his helmet recording. The chamber watched as humans fought and died against superior enemies. The violence was shocking, not because it was more brutal than the war they had been fighting, but because it was so personal. No long-range bombardment, no clean energy weapons, just flesh and metal and blood. By day 20, we were down to 8 people, Daewon said. That's when Park Junho and I had a conversation. We could keep running, keep hiding, keep gathering intelligence like you wanted, or we could do something crazy. Assassinate Krathus, Thax said. Yeah, that's insane, Thax stated. His personal guard alone numbered 500 elite warriors, each capable of killing 10 coalition soldiers. His fortress was impenetrable. Daewon smiled, but there was no humor in it. That's what Junho said too. But then he asked me a question. He said, has anyone ever actually tried to kill him? Like, really tried? And I realized the answer was no. Everyone fought his armies. No one had gone after him personally. He changed the holographic display, showing the fortress layout. The Vothrek respect strength. Krathus advertised his location constantly, daring anyone to challenge him. His fortress was in the capital city, practically inviting attack. Why? Because he knew no one could reach him. So you did the unexpected, Hana said quietly. We did the human thing. We cheated, Daewon pointed at the hologram. We spent 2 weeks learning the guard rotations, the supply deliveries, the celebration schedules. The Vothrek loved their victory celebrations. Big parties, lots of intoxicants, lowered security. They never expected an attack during their own party. He cycled through more images. We went in during their biggest celebration. Victory over the Talesian Collective's home fleet. They were drunk on success and actual alcohol. Junyo, Jizu, and I made it inside using stolen service uniforms. The Vothrek used slave labor from conquered species. We looked like slaves. The chamber was completely silent now, watching the helmet footage play out like a horror film. We planted explosives in the power grid. Chemical explosives, nothing fancy. When they went off, half the fortress went dark. Chaos. Junho held the escape corridor. I told him we'd come back for him. Daewon's voice cracked slightly. He told me to stop lying. He knew it was one way. He bought me and Jisoo 10 minutes. I heard him die over the radio. He paused, collecting himself. Jisoo got me to the throne room level. Then she went back to make sure the power stayed down. She died fighting 30 guards alone. Her last words were, "Don't waste this." The hologram showed a massive door. The throne room. Krathus was there with 50 of his personal guard, trying to figure out what was happening. They weren't ready for an attack. They were confused, disorganized. I had maybe 30 seconds before they rallied. What did you do? Velmara asked. I threw every grenade I had into that room and followed them in. The helmet footage showed explosions, chaos, bodies flying. I killed 20 guards in the first 10 seconds. Not because I'm better than them. Because they didn't expect someone stupid enough to run toward them while explosions were happening. The footage showed Daewon fighting through the guards. It was brutal, ugly combat. He was clearly outmatched, taking damage with every exchange. But he kept moving forward toward Krathus. The Supreme Overlord himself was enhanced, faster, stronger, smarter than his guards. He nearly killed me 3 times. But he had one weakness, and what weakness? Thax demanded. He'd never lost before. He didn't know how to fight someone who wouldn't quit. I couldn't beat him in a fair fight, so I didn't fight fair. The footage showed Daewon getting thrown across the room, his armor cracking. I used a monomolecular blade. Coalition technology, actually. One of the weapons you gave us. It can cut through anything if you can get close enough. The final sequence showed Daewon, bleeding and broken, rolling under Krathus's guard and driving the blade through the Overlord's neck. The Undying fell, shock in all 6 eyes. I cut off his head to make sure he was dead. Then I walked out. Most of the fortress was still dealing with the fires and power outages. They thought I was just another wounded soldier until I was already gone. The chamber remained silent for a long moment after the footage ended. Finally, Senator Quinala spoke, her voice filled with disgust. This is barbarism. You use deception, terrorism, assassination. These are not the methods of civilized warfare. Daewon turned to face her. You're right. They're not. They're the methods of survival. We're not strong enough to beat the Vothrak in honorable combat. So we fight dirty, we cheat, we do whatever it takes to win. And this is what humanity offers the galaxy? Quinala demanded. Violence and treachery? We offer victory, Daewon replied simply. 3 years ago you were winning this war your way. How did that work out? Beck stepped forward, surprising everyone. The human has a point. Our methods failed. His succeeded. Perhaps we need to consider that there is more than one way to fight. Are you suggesting we adopt these barbaric tactics? Another delegate asked. I'm suggesting we survive, Thax replied. However necessary. Velmara raised her hand for silence. This testimony is concluded. We will deliberate on what this means for the war effort and humanity's role in it. Kang Daewon, you are dismissed but must remain available for further questions. As the chamber erupted in arguments, Hana escorted Daewon out. In the corridor, she finally spoke. You didn't tell them everything, did you? Daewon glanced at her. No. What did you leave out? How much I enjoyed it, he said quietly. How good it felt to kill the thing that killed my friends. They're already scared of what we can do. They don't need to know that some of us are good at it. Hana felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had proven they could win. Now they had to prove they deserved to. 6 months after Kara Station, the war had transformed completely. The Vothrak Empire was crumbling. World after world fell to combined coalition and human forces. The humans taught, the coalition learned, and the Vothrak died. But victory came with a price that couldn't be measured in casualties alone. The coalition was changing. Species that had fought with honor for thousands of years now used ambush tactics. Civilizations built on transparency now employed deception. The psychological warfare, the targeting of infrastructure, the acceptance of casualties. All of it spread through the military like an infection. Some said evolution. Others said corruption. In the War Council chamber, the divide grew deeper every day. We've recaptured 60% of lost territory, High Archon Velmara announced, displaying star maps showing their progress. Vothrak supply lines are collapsing. Their fleets are retreating. Victory is within reach. At what cost? Senator Quinala demanded. We've become the very thing we fought against. Our soldiers use terror tactics. Our fleets target civilian infrastructure. We plan battles around acceptable casualties. We're monsters wearing coalition uniforms. We're survivors, General Thax countered. He had changed noticeably in 6 months. The proud warrior who once valued honor above all else now spoke like a human. The Vothrak would have exterminated us. Human methods saved us. Human methods are making us unrecognizable, Quinala replied. She stood, addressing the full council. I propose we begin planning for the post-war period. Specifically, how we contain the human threat once we no longer need them. The chamber erupted. Some delegates shouted agreement. Others protested. Velmara called for order, but the damage was done. The word was out. Contain. Ambassador Yoon Hana heard the recording of that session in her quarters. She sat in silence for a long time, considering her options. She should report this to Earth immediately. Warn her government that some coalition members viewed humanity as a threat to be managed. But if she did that, it would destroy the fragile alliance. Humanity would withdraw or prepare for conflict. The Vothrak would exploit the division. Everything would collapse. Before she could decide, an encrypted message arrived from an anonymous source. It contained evidence of something called the Preservation Circle, a secret group within the coalition dedicated to ensuring humanity never became too powerful. Their plan was detailed. After the war ended, they would propose restrictions on human expansion, placing human military under coalition oversight, banning humans from positions of authority over non-humans, and classifying human warfare methods as crimes. If humanity resisted, they would be contained by force. The message ended with a warning. They fear what they created. Be ready. Hana stared at the evidence for hours. She needed to tell someone, but who? Daewon would react violently. Commander Jiwoo would prepare for war. Her own government would pull back from the coalition. She decided to wait. Keep the information close. Hope it wouldn't be needed. But hope was about to become scarce. 3 days later, intelligence reports showed something terrifying. The fractured Vothric Empire was reuniting under a new leader, Warlord Threknor, who had been Krathus's most brutal general. Threknor had a plan. If he couldn't beat the coalition, he would destroy what they most valued. He's targeting Earth, Commander Baek Jiwoo announced to the command staff. Every intelligence source confirms it. He's gathering the remaining Vothrak fleets for one massive assault. He wants to break humanity's spirit by destroying their homeworld. The room fell silent. Earth was defended, but not heavily. Most human military assets were deployed across coalition space. They had never expected the Vothrak to strike at humanity specifically. How long until they arrive? Thax asked. 4 days. Maybe 5. We need to pull back every available ship. That would leave our offensive operations exposed, an admiral protested. We'd lose the momentum we've gained. We'd lose Earth, Jiwoo replied simply. The coalition debated for hours. Some argued that defending Earth was humanity's problem. Others recognized that if Earth fell, human cooperation would end. The alliance would shatter. Finally, Velmara made her decision. We defend Earth together. All species. Send every ship that can reach the Sol system in time. This is our test. Do we truly stand united? Or were humans simply tools we used? The answer came slowly. Ship by ship, species by species, the coalition fleet assembled. Not everyone came. Some held back, already planning for the post-war containment. But enough came. Thousands of ships converged on Earth's system. Daewon was on Earth when the alert came. He had been given leave, ordered to rest by Hana after months of continuous operations. He stood in the ruins of Seoul where he had grown up. The city was being rebuilt after earlier Vothrak raids, cranes, and construction drones working constantly. Beautiful, isn't it? An old voice said behind him. He turned to find Dr. Lee Minho, the human physician who had been treating coalition and human wounded throughout the war. Minho was in his 70s, too old for combat but invaluable for his medical expertise and calm presence. The city? Daewon asked. The cooperation? Humans and aliens rebuilding together. That's what we're fighting for. Not just survival, but the chance to build something better. If we survive the next week. You sound pessimistic. I sound realistic, Daewon corrected. Threknor is bringing everything. If he wins here, he wins the war. And we're defending our homeworld. No retreating. No fallback positions. We win or we die. Minho nodded slowly. Then I suppose we'd better win. The Vothrak fleet arrived 6 days later, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 3,000 ships, the largest force they had assembled since the war began. It dwarfed the defending fleet. Warlord Threknor broadcast on all frequencies. Humans, you have been thorns in our side for too long. Your methods are dishonorable. Your existence is an insult. Today we erase you from the galaxy. After we burn your world, we will exterminate your allies for their cooperation with you. Commander Jiwoo, commanding the human defense fleet from his flagship, responded calmly. Warlord, you're welcome to try. But fair warning, we don't fight fair and we really don't like people threatening our home. The battle began. It was chaos. The Vothrak fleet pushed forward in a massive wedge formation, absorbing casualties, focused entirely on reaching Earth. The coalition fleet fought desperately to stop them, ships exploding every second. Jiwoo coordinated the defense brilliantly, using human tactics mixed with coalition firepower. They didn't try to meet the Vothrak head-on. Instead, they hit from angles, retreated, struck again. Guerrilla warfare on a fleet scale, but the numbers were against them. The Vothrak pushed through. General Thax, commanding a coalition task force, made a decision that would have been unthinkable a year ago. All ships ram formation. We're going to trade ourselves for time. Sir? His officer asked, shocked. You heard me. The humans taught us that sometimes you have to spend lives to save lives. They've been doing it all war. Now it's our turn. Target their capital ships and ram. Maximum speed. Thax's entire fleet accelerated directly toward the Vothrak command vessels. They crashed like meteorites, shields failing, hulls crumpling, but taking Vothrak ships with them. The sacrifice bought minutes. Precious minutes for evacuation efforts on Earth. The Vothrak reached Earth's orbit. Planetary defenses opened fire. Human orbital platforms, weapons designed for this exact scenario, tore into the Vothrak fleet. But they kept coming. Threknor personally led the assault, his dreadnought targeting Earth's major cities with planet-killing weapons. Captain Shin Hyejin, piloting a human interceptor, saw what he was doing. All fighters form on me. We're taking out that dreadnought. Ma'am, it's shielded. We can't penetrate, so we go through the shield, Hyejin interrupted. She had learned from day one. Sometimes crazy was the only option. Full speed. Follow me in. 20 fighters followed her directly into the dreadnought's shields. Most exploded on contact. Hyejin's fighter made it through. Shields collapsed. Hull burning. She aimed directly at the ship's main weapon as it charged to fire on Sol. For humanity, she said simply, and crashed her fighter into the weapon port. The explosion tore through the dreadnought's interior. The main weapon overloaded. The entire ship came apart from the inside. Warlord Threknor died without ever knowing what killed him. With their commander dead, the Vothrak formation faltered. The coalition fleet, bloodied but unbroken, counterattacked. Jiwoo led the charge personally, his flagship battered but functional. The battle lasted 12 more hours. By the end, the Vothrak fleet was destroyed, but the cost was devastating. Millions dead on Earth, hundreds of ships lost, entire cities damaged or destroyed. Daewon stood in the ruins of Sol Arcology where he had fought off ground forces during the battle. Bodies lay everywhere, human and Vothrak mixed together. He had survived again. So many others hadn't. Hana found him 3 days later. We won. Yeah. The Vothrak Empire is finished. Threknor was their last hope. Without him, they're surrendering system by system. Good. Day one we won the war. Humanity proved itself. We're heroes. He turned to face her and she saw something broken in his eyes. Heroes. Look around, Hana. We turned the coalition into us. We taught them to fight dirty, to sacrifice, to use terror and deception. We won, but we changed them into something they hate. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, the War Council reconvened. Not to discuss war, but to decide what peace would look like. The chamber was the same one where Kang Daewon had once thrown down Krathus's severed head. Some delegates whispered that the stains were still visible on the floor, though the station crew insisted they had cleaned it thoroughly. This time, humanity wasn't represented by just Ambassador Yoon Hana. The human delegation included military commanders, scientists, and political leaders. Earth had earned its seat at the table with blood and victory. Now they would see if they could keep it. High Archon Velmara called the session to order. We gather to forge a new galactic order. The war is over. The Vothrak threat is ended. Now we must decide how we move forward together. Senator Quinala stood immediately. Before we discuss the future, we must address the methods used to secure it. I call for a formal inquiry into human conduct during the war. The chamber fell silent. This was it, the confrontation everyone knew was coming. I have compiled extensive evidence, Quinala continued, displaying holographic images on the central screen. Psychological warfare designed to terrorize enemies, attacks on civilian infrastructure, disproportionate use of force, planned sacrifice of soldiers. These are not the actions of a civilized species. They are war crimes. She showed footage from battles throughout the war, human tactics on full display, the deception, the brutality, the willingness to die for objectives. To coalition species raised on concepts of honor and restraint, it looked monstrous. I propose the following measures, Quinala announced. First, humanity's expansion must be restricted to their home system until they can prove they have evolved beyond their violent nature. Second, all human military forces must be placed under coalition oversight. Third, humans may not hold command positions over non-human forces. Fourth, human warfare methods are hereby classified as prohibited tactics under coalition law. The chamber erupted. Some delegates cheered. Others protested. The coalition was splitting before everyone's eyes. Hannah stood slowly. She had prepared for this moment for months. Everything depended on what she said next. Senator Quinala is absolutely right, she began, stunning everyone into silence. Everything she said about our methods is true. We did use psychological warfare. We did attack infrastructure. We did accept casualties that horrify you. We did all of it. Quinala smiled triumphantly. The human was admitting everything. But let me ask you something. Hannah continued, her voice growing stronger. Where were these objections 3 years ago? When you sent my people on a suicide mission to gather data? When you planned to learn from our deaths? You didn't call us war criminals then, you just called us primitive. She pulled up her own holographic display. Let's review how this war went. For 3 years before humanity got involved, you lost. Systematically, completely. You were preparing to surrender. Then one human soldier killed the unkillable Overlord. And suddenly you wanted our help. The display showed battle after battle. Coalition forces using human tactics, winning. You asked us to teach you. We did. You asked us to fight with you. We did. You asked us to save your worlds. We did. And now that the war is over, now that you don't need us anymore, suddenly we're monsters? Suddenly our methods are crimes? They were always crimes, Quinala insisted. We compromised our values in desperation. Now we must restore them. By caging the species that saved you? Hannah shot back. By restricting our freedom? By treating us like weapons you need to lock away? Let me be very clear, Senator. Humanity will not accept being imprisoned for winning your war. The chamber exploded into arguments. Delegates shouted at each other across species lines. Some supported humanity. Others feared them. The alliance was fracturing. General Thax stood, his crystalline form projecting authority. I must speak, the chamber quieted. Thax had become a hero during the war, respected by all sides. I once believed as Senator Quinala does, he said quietly. I thought human methods were barbaric, dishonorable, wrong. Then I watched Lieutenant Namsumi die taking Kara's station. I watched Captain Shin Hijin sacrifice herself to save Earth. I watched thousands of humans do what we were too civilized to do, spend their lives to save ours. He turned to face the full council. Yes, their methods disturb us. They should. Because they reveal something we don't want to admit. We were losing because we valued our principles more than victory. Humans valued victory more than principles. Who was right? The answer is we were both wrong. The ideal is somewhere between. A compromise? Felmara asked. A synthesis, Thax corrected. Human effectiveness with coalition ethics. Their willingness to fight combined with our restraint. That's what we should be building, not walls to separate us. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors opened. Kang Daewon walked in, uninvited and unannounced. He wore civilian clothes but still moved like a weapon in human form. Behind him walked other veterans, Commander Baek Jiwoo, Captain Oh Dae-sung, and a dozen others who had fought throughout the war. You're not authorized to be here, Quinala protested. Don't care, Daewon replied, walking to the center floor. He looked up at the thousands of delegates. You want to debate what to do with humanity? Fine, but you should hear from the humans who did the fighting first. You have no standing in this council, Quinala insisted. I have this standing, Daewon replied, pulling something from his jacket. It was a holographic projector. He activated it. Images filled the chamber. Not tactical displays, not battle footage, faces. Park Junho, Daewon said as a man's face appeared. Died holding a corridor so I could reach Krathus. Age 26. He had a daughter he never met. Another face. Nam Ji-soo. Died destroying the power grid at Krathus's fortress. Age 31. She was studying to be a doctor before the war. More faces appeared, one after another. Lieutenant Nam Sumi, Captain Shin Hyejin, Private Kim Sunwoo, Sergeant Lee Yuna, Specialist Park Minji, Corporal Choi Yanwoo. Hundreds of faces. Thousands. Every human who had died in the war. These people volunteered, Daewon said, his voice rough with emotion. Not because they were violent savages, because you asked for help and they answered. They used brutal methods because those methods worked. They died using tactics you find disturbing because those tactics saved you. He turned to face Quinala directly. You want to call us war criminals? Fine, but first tell their families that their sacrifices were crimes. Tell the billions of coalition citizens living free right now that the humans who saved them We're monsters who need to be caged. The chamber was absolutely silent. The faces of the dead looked down on them all. A new voice spoke. May I address the council? Everyone turned. Dr. Lee Minho walked slowly to the center floor, his elderly form moving carefully. He had treated thousands during the war, human and alien alike. I'm not a soldier, Minho said. I'm a doctor. I took an oath to preserve life. And I watched these young people, he gestured at the holographic faces, spend their lives to save others. Were their methods brutal? Yes, but were they wrong? He looked at Quinala. You speak of crimes. I speak of intention. Humans didn't fight for conquest or glory. We fought for survival, ours and yours. Every tactic, every sacrifice was aimed at ending the war with minimal total loss of life. Yes, we accepted casualties you wouldn't, but we saved millions more by ending the war quickly. Minho pulled up medical statistics. Coalition casualties in the first 3 years of war. 90 million dead. Coalition casualties in the final year with human involvement. 12 million dead. Total war deaths after human involvement. Less than 15% of what they would have been if the war continued under original coalition doctrine. The numbers spoke for themselves. Velmara finally spoke. These testimonies are compelling, but they don't resolve the fundamental question. Can humanity be trusted with power in a peaceful galaxy? Daewon laughed, but it was bitter. You're asking the wrong question, Archon. It's not whether you can trust us. It's whether we can trust you. You used us to win your war. Now you want to throw us away. That's not how trust works. What do you propose? Velmara asked. Full coalition membership, Hana said, stepping forward. Equal rights, equal voice, equal responsibility. Not restrictions. Not oversight. Partnership. And if we refuse? Quinala demanded. Commander Jiwoo answered. Then humanity will withdraw from coalition space. We'll defend our territory and let you handle your own problems. But understand, if another threat emerges, don't expect us to help species that tried to cage us. It was a threat and a promise. The coalition faced a choice, accept humanity fully or lose them entirely. The debate raged for 3 days. Finally, a vote was called. The result was narrow but decisive. Humanity would receive full coalition membership. But there were conditions. A joint military academy would be established to train officers in combined doctrine. Human tactics would be classified as extreme measures, requiring authorization from Joint Command. And a council would be formed to review military actions for ethical compliance. It was a compromise. No one was completely happy, but it worked. After the vote, Daewon stood on an observation deck looking out at the coalition ships departing. Hana joined him. We won, she said, did we? Or did we just postpone the real fight? What do you mean? They'll always fear us, Hana. What we can do... 2 weeks after Daewon's testimony, the War Council made a decision that split the galaxy. They would allow humanity to conduct military operations using their own methods. It was a gamble. Some called it desperation. Others called it madness. High Archon Velmara announced the decision personally. We face extinction. Traditional methods have failed. We must adapt or die. Humanity has proven effective. We will learn from them. Not everyone agreed. Senator Quinala led a vocal opposition, calling it the beginning of the coalition's moral collapse. But she was outvoted. Survival mattered more than principles to most delegates. General Thax was assigned as military liaison to the human forces. He protested privately to Velmara, but she was firm. You said we need to survive. Now prove you meant it. Learn from them. 3 days later, the human fleet arrived at the coalition's main military station. Commander Baek Jiwoo led 12 ships into dock. The coalition officers watched the human vessels approach with barely hidden contempt. 12 ships. The coalition had thousands, but these ships were different. Where coalition vessels were sleek and elegant, built for exploration and research with weapons as an afterthought, human ships looked like someone had strapped engines to weapon platforms. Every surface bristled with guns, missile tubes, rail cannons. The ships weren't pretty. They were brutal. Baek Jiwoo met with Thax in the station's command center. The human commander was in his 50s, gray hair cut military short, eyes that had seen too much combat. He saluted coalition style, showing respect even though technically they were equals now. General Thax, Jiwoo said, my government sends its regards. We're here to help win this war. With 12 ships, Thax replied, trying to keep skepticism from his voice. With 12 warships and 3,000 soldiers trained in human combat doctrine. Quality over quantity, General. It's how we operate. Thax wanted to argue but remembered Daewon killing Krathis with a handful of people. Maybe humans had a different understanding of numbers. The real challenge began when human instructors started training coalition forces. Lieutenant Namsumi was assigned to teach special operations tactics to a mixed unit of coalition species. She was small by human standards, barely 160 centimeters tall, but she moved like violence personified. Her first training session shocked everyone. Warfare is about breaking your enemy, she told the assembled aliens, not just their bodies, their minds, their spirit. You make them afraid to fight you. A Talesian officer raised his hand. We don't use fear tactics. That's dishonorable. Dishonorable? Sumi smiled coldly. How many of your people died in honorable combat? How many are dead because you fought fair while the Vothrak didn't? The officer had no answer. Sumi continued the lesson, teaching tactics that made the coalition soldiers uncomfortable. How to plant false intelligence to trick enemies. How to target supply lines instead of just military targets. How to make an enemy paranoid and exhausted before the real fight even began. This is psychological warfare, another officer complained. We're soldiers, not terrorists. You're whatever you need to be to win, Sumi replied. Or you're dead. Choose. The cultural clash extended beyond tactics. Coalition doctrine minimized casualties through superior technology and careful planning. Human doctrine accepted that people would die and planned accordingly. Captain O. Daesung taught squad tactics to coalition infantry. His first lesson covered acceptable losses. In this scenario, you need to take that fortified position, he explained, showing a holographic battlefield. You have 20 soldiers. Coalition doctrine says you find a way to win with 0 casualties using technology and time. Human doctrine says you accept that 5 will die taking that position, but 15 survive and the mission succeeds. The coalition soldiers were horrified. You would sacrifice 5 people? I would use 5 people's sacrifice to save 15 and complete the objective, Daesung corrected. And those 5 would volunteer because they know their deaths mean something. That's the difference. We don't waste lives. We spend them when necessary. The concept of soldiers volunteering to die was alien to most coalition species. They fought bravely, but the idea of planned sacrifice disturbed them deeply. Daewon, now promoted to tactical advisor, taught the concept of total war to coalition commanders. This session included General Thax himself. You fight armies, Daewon explained, showing intelligence maps of Vothrak territory. That's your mistake. You should fight civilizations. Explain, Thax demanded. Every army needs food, fuel, ammunition, replacement equipment, and information. They need supply lines. They need factories. They need farms. They need communications. You've been targeting their fleets and ignoring everything that supports those fleets. Daewon highlighted dozens of targets on the map. These are Vothrak industrial worlds. These are supply depots. These are communication hubs. You destroy these, their armies starve. Their ships run out of ammunition. Their coordination collapses. Those targets include civilian infrastructure, an admiral pointed out. Yes, Daewon agreed. That's targeting civilians. That's a war crime by coalition law. Then change your laws or keep losing. Your choice. Daewon's bluntness was becoming legendary. The Vothrak don't separate military and civilian infrastructure. Everything supports their war machine. You want to beat them? Stop playing by rules they don't follow. The argument raged for hours. Eventually, a compromise was reached. They would target infrastructure that directly supported military operations, but avoid purely civilian targets. It was more than coalition forces had done before, but less than what Daewon recommended. The first joint operation was planned to retake Kara Station, a strategic hub the Vothrak had held for a year. Coalition forces would assault directly while human special operations teams would infiltrate and sabotage from within. Sumi led a team of 8, 4 humans and 4 coalition, volunteers who had embraced the human way. Their mission was to destroy the station's power grid, creating chaos for the main assault. The infiltration went perfectly. Using human stealth technology and tactics, they penetrated the station's outer hull and moved through maintenance corridors. Coalition forces would have announced themselves honorably. Humans snuck in like thieves, They reached the power grid without being detected. Sumi's team began planting charges while the main coalition fleet engaged in orbit. The space battle followed traditional doctrine, two fleets hammering each other with energy weapons, shields flashing, both sides taking measured casualties. Charges set, Sumi reported over encrypted communications. Detonation in 60 seconds. Tell the fleet to get ready. Then alarms screamed. Fothrek security had found them. Contact, one of the coalition volunteers shouted, as the corridor filled with enemy soldiers. We're trapped. Execute the mission, Sumi ordered calmly, firing her weapon. Thax, we need the fleet to strike the moment these charges blow. We won't be leaving. In the command ship, General Thax heard her clearly. Lieutenant, extract immediately. We can abort and try again. Negative. The charges are armed and we're surrounded. Extraction isn't possible. Sumi's voice remained steady even as weapons fire echoed behind her. Get your people ready to capitalize on this. Don't waste it. Thax watched the tactical display, frozen with indecision. Coalition doctrine said you saved your people. You didn't sacrifice them for an objective, but this was the human way. Sir, one of his officers said quietly, she's giving us the opening we need. The main assault will succeed if we act now. Thax made the hardest decision of his life. All ships prepare to breach the station the moment their power grid fails. Focus all fire on defensive sections. On the station, Sumi's team fought desperately. One by one, her soldiers fell. The coalition volunteers fought bravely but died quickly when overwhelmed. The human soldiers lasted longer, using every dirty trick they knew. 15 seconds. Sumi counted down, her weapon empty, switching to a knife. 10 seconds. She was hit twice, armor cracking. She kept fighting. 5 seconds. A Vothrak warrior grabbed her, claws digging in. She stabbed upward into the gap in his armor. 2, 1. The charges detonated. The entire power grid exploded in a cascade of failures. Life support failed. Shields dropped. Weapon systems went offline. Half the station went dark and cold. The coalition fleet struck like a hammer. Without shields, the station's defenses crumbled. Ships poured through breaches, Marines flooding in. The Vothrak garrison, confused and disorganized in the darkness, fought back weakly. 3 hours later, Kara's station was in coalition hands. Thax led the team that found Sumi's body. She had killed 7 more Vothrak after the explosion before finally falling. Her last message, recorded on her helmet, was simple. We did it. Don't forget what it cost. The victory celebration in the coalition fleet was muted. They had won, yes, but the cost felt wrong. Too personal, too brutal. General Thax addressed his officers afterward. Lieutenant Sumi and her team gave us this victory. They fought using methods we considered barbaric, but they won. We must ask ourselves, are we willing to do the same? Because if we're not, we should stop pretending we can beat the Vothrak. The room was silent. The humans have shown us that winning requires sacrifice. Real sacrifice, not just words and speeches. They're willing to die for objectives. The question is, are we? That night, Daewon stood alone on an observation deck.